First of all, thank you for joining us and for this lovely and insightful session. My name is Hamza Bouroga. I'm E4Impact Tunisia Country Manager. I will be your host today. And we are going to discuss, I think is one of the most critical subject or topic in entrepreneurship, which is transforming an idea into market-ready solution. As most of you know, E4Impact has been a champion for entrepreneurship and innovation across Africa. We have been working in the ecosystem. I will go later with a small introduction about E4Impact. So in our journey, we have reached, let's say, quite of good expertise in training entrepreneurship, and I hope by topic today, which is called making ideas happen from concept to market-ready solution, will cover some of these phases that every solution must go through in order to become every solution must go through to become a market-ready inclusion idea, prototyping and testing and scaling. For that, I would like first of all to make a small presentation about E4Impact, and then we can go to our host, to our expert, Mr. Francesco. So as you can, I hope everybody can see my screen. So this is small presentation about our foundation. So our mission is to support entrepreneurs across Africa, to build and scale strong sensibility and innovative business. We have an Islands of Africa University where there we can train the MBA program, and we are developing partnership and commercial relationship between Africa and international companies, especially Italian. Our foundation is right now running in more than 20 countries, and hopefully by 2028, we are going to run 10 national entrepreneurship centers. There we can offer training, financial opportunity, acceleration program, and then we can be leading force in creating and growth for impact entrepreneurs on the continent. So a brief history about our foundation, which was founded since 2005 with a Master for African Student, where the idea was to have an MBA program with Italian excellence for African students. And there we start the global MBA with a partnership with the university since 2010, and it's just growing up for all Africa. Hello, Francesco. I see our expert is here with us today. We can continue then. He can join us later. And some of the founders here is like just a small list of the founders. All of them, they are Italian. We are talking about companies, but we are talking about companies, organizations, and etc. And this is a portfolio of our activities. This is our main activities. MBA program in impact entrepreneurship, which is we have developed other programs related to that, which is called like short programs. We have also international service to develop business relationship between African and international company. And right now, even more, we create even like, let's say, bilateral relationship, like even between African countries with our B2B platform. I think most of you, like talking about our alumni, they are familiar with the platform. We have an entrepreneurship center where we provide incubation, acceleration, and multilateral project. Then this is like a map about our offices and where we have some presence. I think this is not updated, but I can confirm from you that most of the offices are running right now, which I see them. So we are almost present in most of the region in Africa. So just I need to mention one last thing, that We do not teach entrepreneurs. This is like, let's say, our logo. We train impact entrepreneurs. We prepare entrepreneurs for how to deal with their companies and how to grow and scale their business. Our MBA program is not traditional MBA. It's combines between development and business acceleration. It's not really for corporate. It's not really for C-level manager. It's just for entrepreneurs, people who would like to build a business, persons who would like to develop their business. So that's what we have. So this is some stuff about our MBA program, and then we can go for it. So I can right now just okay. It's just I can stop sharing my screen. I can give the role to our lovely expert, Mr. Dr. Francesco. Let's say Dr. Francesco. He will introduce himself. A lot of experience, a lot of expertise. I think he will join the session, and I hope it will be we can learn some new stuff with him.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Good. Okay, so I'll try to share my screen and then just provide a bit of an overview of what we want to cover today. And also my background. Just give me a second. I got a few slides that I'd like to share with you today, as I did last time. Can you see the cover slide?
Yes. Francesco, I didn't give a presentation about you. Could you be able even to present yourself for
Sure. Absolutely. I will do that in a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hamza. Well, let me start with just saying thank you to everybody for joining. Good afternoon and good evening. Particular thanks to those who joined me for the last webinar. I recognize some familiar names from now a month ago or so, I think. Your question and input really made it a lively session, and I think that's the reason why we're having a follow-up. But also big welcome to everyone who's joining us today for the first time. Before I introduce myself, just very briefly, last time we covered a big picture of taking a product from 0 to 1, what we call the path to product innovation. Perhaps you mentioned that already, Hamza. I just joined a couple of minutes late due to some tech issues. Today, we want to zoom into some of the steps that get us from the product concept to a market-ready solution. And really, the key question we want to answer is, how do we make ideas happen? How do we turn them into solutions that really matter to our customers, right? So I'll be sharing stories from my own experience and insights from scholars and successful entrepreneurs and investors in the software space, but also in the product space more broadly, and some of which we got to know already last time. So feel free to jump in with questions along the way, but also there's going to be more time for discussion towards the end. Okay, so a little bit about me. For those who don't know me as yet, I spent most of my career helping companies and academia innovate. So that's why my passion for innovation. I've done that by providing, for the most part, software and data to help discover and launch new technologies and new products. I've led corporate strategy and transformation at large companies like Thomson Reuters and Clarivate, which you may be familiar with. I helped really scale those businesses, triple the size in revenue, both organic and inorganic growth. I worked in product roles for a period of time where I developed new solutions from the ground up. And this really gave me a direct feel for really what it takes to build something innovative and take it to market. Before then, I worked as a strategy consultant at Deloitte. And then before then, I earned a PhD in sociology and social research at the Catholic University, Università Cattolica Milan. So I have to say it's a great feeling to be able to collaborate with my alma mater again, after a few years. I'm based in London. My work really has been mostly Europe, US, and APAC. I'm less knowledgeable about Africa, so I'm really keen to hear more from you guys how what we're going to discuss applies to your markets. Okay, so again, just let me check you guys can hear me okay. Thumbs up. Yeah, all good?
All good, Francesco, all good.
Okay, wonderful. This is a slide that we really started from last time, the path to great product. I do want to just briefly recap what this is about and then focus more on the mid bit. You see the phase 3, 4, 5, as I said, right, from building the concept, the value prop, all the way to a minimum viable product. So to start with, we found out an interesting thing, a month ago or so. If we are to build a successful product, we must forget about the product and actually start with the right problem. So first, frame the problem that you want to solve. And why is that? Because problems worth solving lead to solutions worth building. Then second, we recommended that you develop countless ideas as to how that problem can be addressed. And then in doing that, being creative and analytical at the same time, right? So do this and then prioritize relentlessly until you're left with pretty much one good solution. And this will become your product concept. Then you enter the middle phase of the journey, right? And you need to develop at that point a compelling, unique value proposition and a product strategy. And then you really need to make sure that this resonates with your audience before you do anything, really. Because if it doesn't resonate with your customers, then your product won't either. So you're better off not even investing in the product. Then it's time to prototype and testing, right? And test, you build early versions of your solution, you get feedback from the market. And then once your concept is shaped and refined, then you build a minimum viable product with the core features so that you can then start to really launch and build towards a more full product launch, which you can then expand over time, right? And launch and scale. And then you keep iterating. You keep getting real world feedback and keep improving every step of the journey. So just to bring this to life for a moment, let's take an example which hopefully will be familiar to many, Airbnb. Airbnb is an online marketplace for accommodations. They began by addressing a clear problem, which was, I think it was around 2005, maybe, so a while back. The lack of affordable and unique lodging for travelers. Their hypothesis was that, they wanted to build a peer-to-peer model that could solve this, which would basically allow people like me and you and I to then rent out their spaces. They validated the concept very cheaply, right? And they did it actually by hosting guests on mattresses in their own apartment in San Francisco. I cannot think of a cheaper way of doing it. They validated the concept. In fact, those guests were even willing to pay. Great, take that on board. Great piece of feedback. And then with this validation, they built a minimum viable website that would be focused solely on connecting hosts and guests, no extra features, just the essentials. And then they refined and expanded the platform based on feedback and really emphasized on what was really core to their customers: safety, trust, quality. And now they're expanding globally and with experiences, not just accommodations. It just brings to life what this journey can be about. I do want to focus, and the reason for this is last time many of you expressed the desire to go a little deeper, right? Dig a little deeper and maybe discuss some tools that are available out there that we can lean on. there were a few questions, and I'll try to address some of those. So I'll then start back with the unique value proposition. So as we said, every successful product starts with a compelling vision and a value proposition. What is this? It's a promise. It's essentially a promise. The product doesn't exist as yet, right? It's a promise that communicates why the product will matter. Before you design any feature, it's crucial that you ensure A, that the product addresses a real problem, and then B, that it delivers a value that is unique and also memorable. And this could be based on a combination of things, right? It could be your business model, it could be core features, design, technology, the user experience, right? Any of this or a combination of these pieces. Why is it important? Because it makes sure that your product is distinct. Now, remember one thing, market doesn't really rewards better products. It rewards different products. Something to really bear in mind. And then once you have your value proposition, it will serve as the foundation to guide product development and to start to attract early adopters. So really, really important. Now, before we go actually into maybe the details of it, Jessica and I thought would be helpful to just actually, let me just step back for a second. I forgot I wanted to run a very quick survey because I do want to go into some of the depth about unique value proposition and prototyping and testing. But since we've already done a quick run through, I do want to just quickly check with you. We have a pop-up survey that hopefully we can just prompt on the screen. I just want to hear from you. You guys have your own startups, right? You got your own projects about new products, and I want to hear from you. For your business or your product, which of the following activities you have completed, right? Have you developed a unique value proposition? Have you tested your product concept with customers? Have you developed a product prototype? And have you used the minimum viable product approach before launching? You may find that actually none of these activities apply to your role for various reasons. And so if so, you can pick the last choice. Let me just do this. I do want to make it a little bit more interactive here and get a feel for how familiar are you with this because you've actually done it. So we're going to give you 10, 15 seconds. You tick all that apply, right? It's a multiple choice. If you've done them all, just pick 1, 2, 3, and 4. If none, don't tick anything. If it doesn't apply, just tick the last option. Okay. Hopefully you have all voted. Let's take a look at the poll. And generate the results. I'm really curious. Really curious. Okay. That's already very interesting. So a third thinks that this doesn't quite apply to them. And the majority have developed a unique value proposition, which is encouraging. It's really, really important. And without that, it's hard to do really some of the other pieces. Very few developed a product concept with, or tested it. Actually, I should say tested it with customers. Product prototype 18%, even less, and then a minimal viable product, even less. So I think that's quite interesting, and this may be an opportunity to prompt you guys towards thinking of how you could start to actually do more of this. Because if you developed your unique value proposition, then you need to test that with customers in the vast majority of cases. And prototyping, whilst that's not always necessarily relevant or possible, in many cases, there is a way, and we'll see some of those ways, to actually build something quite quickly and get it out there and get feedback. This is not just for software or tech businesses, right? It can apply to services, different types of solutions, consumer goods, right? There's many, many ways to actually get feedback through interviews and then prototypes, and then making sure you launch something agile so that you can get more feedback before you go into full launch. So I want to hear more from you as to, after this session, whether you think actually you can do more of this. Okay, super helpful. Thank you for voting. Good. So I've already covered briefly what the unique value proposition is about. You basically need to see through your customer eyes, right? So in the end, that's what it is about. What I would also prompt you to do is to distinguish between users and decision makers. You gotta be aware of who would be your end user and who is the budget holder, and then be able to address both. They will have different needs. You gotta be able to win over both. So my suggestion is at the bottom of many of these slides, you see a little symbol that, tries to really highlight a tool, something that you can use to, make this a little bit more real and actionable. So you could craft a visual pain statement. For example, if you're developing a software, then you could draft the current messy workflow, and then as you craft your product concept, a simplified version of how that could look like based on your software or your solution. As you do this, it's important to use feelings and emotions, not just facts. Someone talks about building empathy maps that really visualize what the struggle of customers is and really bring it to life. We're using Zoom today, right? If you think about Zoom, they did it brilliantly. They looked into, the process for many of those video conferences. It was chaotic. It was, people were frustrated with unreliable features. They would fail at critical moments. It would add stress to your meeting. Doing meetings is stressful already enough. And they solved this by offering a straightforward, reliable service that just works and actually gives you also more options. So that's a good example of how you could, understand the pain of your customers and do something to solve it. Let's move on to the next slide. Once you've done this, it's important to have a vision-driven product strategy. I would recommend you do this. Not everybody does it. It's not always essential. But if you lead with vision and not just a product feature kind of story, you will inspire your team and you will inspire customers as well. The way to do this is you could ask yourself 3 questions. Who are we trying to help? What change are we driving? And what change do you want to see in the world? You're an innovator. What are you, what cause are you embracing in a way? And then why does this matter? A good example of this is Tesla. Tesla approach to developing their cars and actually their business more broadly was centered on a mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And they developed, electric vehicles and solar energy solutions that were very much really focused towards this one vision. A good way to do this is you draft the launch press release. You could do this. You could do that really early on. It's actually a helpful exercise. Amazon does that. I mentioned that last time as well. You kind of work backward. You put yourself into the shoes of, into the position when you will be able to launch a product. What are you going to tell the world that is exciting, that is captivating? Try to do that now, because if you can craft that story, and if the story sells, then you're going to be in a good place. At this point, you're going to be able to really develop a compelling product concept. And the point of the product concept is to describe how the solution addresses the customer issues that you identified, right? And in a way that is unique. It's kind of a blueprint, right? It's a shared vision that aligns folks from the team to the stakeholders on what we're creating and why this is special. What I would recommend here of doing is to reimagine things. It's helpful to use first principles thinking, which is a way to really deconstruct the various assumptions about how things currently work, the status quo, and actually rebuild from fresh perspectives. How we're gonna go about solving the massive struggle that we've identified. At the bottom here, you see some elements that I would recommend being part of your product concept, really. You wanna test the value to customer of your offering, the target market and personas, the core features, what makes it unique, right? The differentiation versus your competitors, anything existing, the customer benefits, for example, it could be time saved, or it could be money saved, or convenience and user experience. The user experience in itself, and the user, is it engaging, intuitive? How is this different? The technology, and then maybe optional is the pricing strategy and a product roadmap, which is really how you're going to price it and how you're going to achieve the various milestones towards launching your solution. Next, it's really about testing and refining, but it's not really next, right? This is something that you need to do every step of the way. So my recommendation is that you do this once you've identified and outlined your pain statement, and then actually you do it once you've outlined your product concept. At every step of the way, it's so important that you go out there, you talk with the market. The slide here starts with a statement which is maybe a bit strong, right? Everyone is lying to you. There's a book by Rob Fitzpatrick that is called The Mom Test that says exactly this: how to learn if your business is a good idea when everyone is lying to you, your friends, your mom, your family, even potential customers, right? They, may want to be supportive. You need to dig deep, right? It's so important. And my recommendation is, I've seen the attendance, the list. A lot of you guys are the CEOs or the founders of your startups. I would recommend that you are out there leading that customer validation exercise. You need to put your reputation on the line. It's so important. It has to be managed by the very top. And my suggestion is there's various ways of doing it, by the way. You could do observation, you can do field research. Here I want to talk a little bit more about doing customer interviews. And so my recommendation is you do 10 plus, maybe 5 to 10 with decision makers, 5 to 10 with end users. You build your panel of interviewees. You focus your audience, right? Because you got to be something to someone before you try to be, more to everyone. And so you want to be focused from a geography standpoint, from a persona standpoint. You want to talk with the right level of seniority, depending on what your solution is about, in terms of industry verticals, right, that you're targeting. If you already have customers, if you're a business that is already selling, then I would recommend having a mixture of current customers to refine your product strategy, as well as new prospects customers. So you have a fresh perspective as well as perspective of people and customers and users that know you already. So as we said, you test the pain points first, then you test also your product concept. And what I would say is at the bottom here, there's a few things that I would really try to keep in mind, right? You want to walk out of this exercise with a much better feel for the goals, the needs, the emotions, the behaviors of your customers. Any trends in the market or in the workplace that is impacting them, what the perceived value of your product concept is. Do they, attach value, a lot of value, a little bit of value? Whether there's any gap in the market, have they come across with anything remotely similar? Yes, no. And then things like what are their key purchasing criteria? What is it that would really move them towards buying a solution like the one that you're describing? And are they willing to spend? Is their budget available? What is the decision-making process? Those are all things that are going to be very important to validate your plan of action, your idea, but also then ultimately to build your business case, and then ultimately to be able to pitch to your investors as well, right? So it's really a fact gathering piece, so important. Few tips here from having done it, really several times on my projects. Various people do it differently. Some would start with group interviews. I personally find it helpful to start with one-to-one interviews, about maybe 45, 60 minutes each, and then be iterative. It just allows you to do one interview, learn, improve your line of questioning, and then get more feedback next time around. Also, people will be a little bit more open. If you start out with a group interview, maybe few will be able to share meaningful insights. Don't lead the witness. This is not a sale. This is research, right? No bias, no judgment. There's no bad outcome from this. If the outcome is your idea doesn't work, then you save time and money. If the outcome is it works, then great, thumbs up, right? There's no bad outcome. In fact, you should try and push your customers to be very, very hard on you, right? And push back. They need to be 100% aligned. If not, why not? Come in with a written interview guide, right? So that you know what you're looking for, but keep it open-ended, right? Come with your hypotheses, test them, but also at the same time be open to surprises. Listen, if you can, even record the call, because sometimes you miss very interesting clues, even body language, for example, or maybe a hint that you've missed out and actually may uncover something interesting. I say on the slide, act like an archaeologist. There's a quote that I like that says, exactly this. It's about searching the truth, one layer after one layer, and sometimes the value is not in the direct answer, but it's something that you feel, and then you are able to shift your questioning to go in the right direction. So not easy, but fun. And then if you can, build a customer advisory board. Like for the products that I was responsible for, at Thomson Reuters, Clarivate, I would have a customer advisory board that would then stay on over time as we develop the products. Every quarter or so, we would touch base, discuss our product roadmap, and get really input, and also have them as your starting base for your sales efforts later on, and have them as champions in the market also. The next slide is about prototype and testing, but before we go there, let me just pause here for a second and see if there's any burning question. I do have some time scheduled for questions at the end, but let me pause here for a moment and hear from Hamza or Jessica or others if there's any burning question.
We don't have no question for the moment, Francesco.
Okay, good. All clear then, or you're just saving it for later. Prototype and testing. So here, actually, maybe we could do a quick poll as well. Not just a poll, but just write on the chat if you want, right? If you found yourself in a situation where you've spent months, maybe years, polishing a product before even a single customer touched it. And my guess would be some of you may be in this situation, because we've seen the poll at the beginning. And whilst many of you do the product concept part, not many have done the prototyping, right? So the risk of not doing it is that you end up investing money, maybe even hiring a team to sell a product. So you build the product, you spend money, you hire sales folks to sell it and build a bit of an infrastructure around it, to only find out that it doesn't quite fly, right? So try to actually reverse the process, build something fast, and then get feedback, and try to really de-risk your innovation journey. This is where prototyping comes really handy. Eric Ries is the author of The Lean Startup. I mentioned this scholar last time. He's really the father of the Lean Startup. And what he essentially says is to try and get something out there, even if it's not perfect, then iterate, get feedback and iterate like crazy. A good example is Dropbox. I think I've mentioned it already last time for those who were on the call. I think it's a great example. Dropbox, for those who don't know, is a leading file storage platform. And they didn't really do much coding to start off. They made a video, just a simple video that showed what Dropbox could do. Overnight, 70,000 people signed up, right? And so they didn't even have a working product yet, but they had validation at that point. They knew people wanted it, and so they built it. It's a good example. Next slide. So we did say we want to go a little deeper. So I thought to share some methods, and they really will depend on the type of solution, of course, that you're thinking of, right? The stage of development as well. Each of these methods will have different levels of fidelity, speed, cost. And so you really will need to see what works for you. And it's definitely not an exhaustive list. The recommendation here is to start from low-cost prototypes and then build towards more complex prototypes that would give you more and more feedback. And so the more you gain confidence, the more you can invest in better prototypes and get richer inputs. Their order effect by level of complexity, if you will, right? It could be simple stuff like paper prototyping or simple sketches, or digital wireframes or mockups, right? That visualize, the screen design, the structure, or clickable prototypes. You could have physical prototypes, perhaps 3D model, right? That gives a better feel for what the tangible, outcome will be. Wizard of Oz, Concierge, you can look these things up. There's many, insights out there, but essentially it's about providing the full functionality, a user experience that is a little more comprehensive, but there's a human that operates parts of it behind the scenes, so you don't have to build too much from a product standpoint. And then you have, other ways, pop-up stores, or, fake doors. There's various ways of calling it, but you think of how many restaurants nowadays they open with a pop-up, a pop-up concept to see if people really like the food, if the location works well, and then they scale up their operations. And then functional prototypes is the more complex stuff where you have high fidelity models that really mimic more closely the final product's look and feel. On the right, there's market engagement. These are not necessarily prototypes, but there's ways to start to get to measure the appeal of your solution, right? It could be email campaigns or paid ads or landing pages, or you even can pre-order things. We've seen, an example before with Dropbox, right? Or crowdfunding. Various ways to really start to measure the interest in your product. Speed plus feedback equal to success. So at this stage, really, it's important that you get feedback. We talked about interviews, as you build your unique value proposition, but those are also important as you prototype things. But also you can do other things like A and B testing, which is pretty much, you show two, options, two versions of the product or a feature and see which ones resonates more. You can build heat maps if it's for example, it's a web-based solution or software. You can track where users spend most time. I would do this. We would have all kind of usage metrics of our product, and then really map the user journey on the product and see what's more valuable and what's actually not that interesting, perhaps. The important thing here is to both get quantitative and qualitative feedback, right? They're both very, very important. The build, measure, and learn cycle is really what it says in essence is you develop a simple version of a feature of a product, you gather data, and then you learn and you iterate. And then step by step, you get closer to a product that will be your final, your final solution, although there's never really something final. As you do this, you need to be ready to pivot, sometimes even significantly, right? So this has to be, really a customer-led, customer-centric approach. Now we're on to the last step that I wanted to spend a little bit more time. So I think we're then going to have decent time for questions. Minimal viable product. This is the first functional version of a product. It's designed to test the core idea, and again gather more feedback. Some other folks like to call it minimal lovable product. I think the point is you want to test for both functionality and customer satisfaction. Does it work? Does it make people happy? It's important to balance speed and stability. So whilst the Silicon Valley narrative is get out something out there as quickly as possible, you need to build enough in it for it to be meaningful. So intuitive, fast, but also meaningful. And then as you measure the customer interaction with your product, try to really avoid vanity metrics, so-called. Look for retention. Are users coming back? If they download an app, great. But if they don't use it, then what's the point? Sooner or later, there's going to be churn, or there's no real value. Or net promoter score. Would they be likely to recommend your solution? Are users taking key actions, conversion rates, etc.? So this is also quite important. What I want to say, and this is towards really the end of it, is you may already have your product out there. Perhaps is why you're not right. Perhaps is not why you voted in your initial poll. But just bear in mind that your product needs to evolve over time. Otherwise, it will get into survival mode. Your competitors will improve and enhance. So this is something that you need to be over and over again. Right? Product market fit isn't a one-time achievement. So continue to apply some of this methodology and stay relevant. You got to be agile. And then it's also important, of course, once you have a history, you'll be able to exploit what you have learned already. But you also need to balance that with exploring to learn. And I've made this mistake, in the past already. For example, launching products that would build on an existing platform would be an extension, and then try to really leverage what we knew already, or deliver an experience that would be incremental, so that you can build on what you already have, and perhaps missing the trick of actually doing something a bit more radically different that in the end will deliver more value. And so that's why I also recommended, if you got customers, it's important to keep them on board, but also get fresh new perspectives from other prospects. So this is for everyone, not just those who are really starting afresh. That's it. Now it's really over to a bit of a good debate. My question to you is, are you ready to innovate? How you go about building innovation, right? To be able to craft innovative products, we got to be sometimes really willing to change how we go about things. So thank you for listening, and over to any questions and really inputs and thoughts from anyone.
Thank you, Francesco, for the presentation. And let's wait a little bit for our fans to send us some question. Don't be shy. Just take the opportunity and let's have some questions. Also, it was very challenging for me, Francesco. I'm going to ask you something. I have something in my mind, and and they would like to get an answer.
Sure.
So my question is this is my question. So it's a measurement of success. So once you are in the market, what are the metrics or indicators that measure the solution impact and success? So
Yeah.
what?
It, it, such an important question because really what you measure then will define the decisions that you're going to be taking as to whether, you know, it's time to scale or it's time to pause and revisit. And what I would say is, you know, try to track things that really matter. So certainly the financial measures are always going to be important. There's no doubt about it. You know, how many customers you got on board, you know, revenue that you start to, you know, build out. So for example, you know, it'll be different depending on really on the sector, the market, the solution, but, you know, you probably don't want to start hiring a sales team or a VP of sales before you have, you know, 1 million, you know, of sort of recurring revenue or, you know, robust, you know, revenue basis, if you will. So those are important. Those are, if you wonder, you know, your core financial metrics, but it's also important to look into leading metrics that really tell you about the satisfaction of the users and the customers and whether they're coming back to your product, if they're, for example, using it, if they're interacting with it, how many active sessions do they have? For example, if it is a web-based solutions, how long are these sessions? And sometimes a long session is actually not good news. It means perhaps that your experience is clunky. So you gotta be able to then get qualitative insights as well to be able to interpret your data in a way that is, you know, meaningful. I mentioned, you know, things like Net Promoter Score. It's a measure that I quite like. It's basically the likelihood of someone to recommend your solution to someone else. You know, I think it's a great synthetic metric about customer satisfaction. You know, it's the ability to then pay, of course, right? So you want to know whether your customers are being willing to spend and how much, right? So the price point they will be able to, you know, justify in the market, it's also going to be a very important, you know, metric for you. So those are some of the things that I would, you know, look into. Of course, it will very much depend on the kind of product and solution. But what I would encourage you guys to do is not only look at financial metrics, because it's easy to sometimes to be in a bit of a bubble. You got early adopters, they're excited and, you know, they buy into the idea and into the product, but then it's about your impact that you can generate.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. We have a question from Augustine, if I say the name correctly. And she say, at what level should one consider take up a prototype? After how many failures? For example, she say, Alibaba report products rejection everywhere, and yet he succeed.
Do you mind to just go over it again? Just want to make sure I understand the point of the question.
At what level should one consider take up a prototype? I don't know what's that mean. After how many failures should we consider taking up a prototype? And she mentioned the example of Alibaba. Alibaba reports product rejection everywhere, but he succeed.
Yeah, so if I understand the question well, the prototyping is, so if the prototyping fails, then you need to go back and reassess. So of course, the whole point about prototyping and testing is precisely that, to avoid building out a product that ends up, you know, falling flat and not really meeting the customer demands and the needs, not resolving the pain points that you're looking to really fix. And so it de-risks your product development. As you do this, you may oftentimes, in fact, many times you will end up failing. In fact, actually, the early you embrace prototyping, the easier it is that you're going to be failing, because perhaps you've done a little less research, because you want to be fast. You want to get real world feedback as opposed to close yourself and your team in a room for a long period of time brainstorming or just having endless customer interviews that, yes, will give you insights, but in the end, it's not really the real world feedback to a prototype, to a physical product to a landing page to a functional product, whatever it is, right? So if your prototypes keep failing, then perhaps the issue is with the actual product concept. And so what you probably need to do is you go back to your original value proposition and reassess it. Is this really a visceral pain point and struggle of my customers that I'm trying to fix? Or is it a nice thing to have, but actually they can live with that pain? They're not really willing to, engage with the solution or perhaps pay for it. Or if there's anything that I can do to shift my solution so that it becomes more compelling. And then you go back and prototype in a way that is different. So iteration is helpful, but if the incremental iteration is not quite taking you anywhere, then you may need to step back and just revisit your thesis a bit more radically. The example of Alibaba, I'm not as familiar with, so perhaps I apologize if I'm not really answering the question in its entirety, but hopefully this gives you a bit of a bit of a pointer. Happy to hear more from whoever asked the question. I can't really see the chat.
Okay.
Because
Let's wait for her reply. But we have another question. I think it's common for many of our entrepreneurs, and he say like, we understand this is apply for what you say, like stage it and what can be done. It applies for product development. Does it also apply for service development?
for services,
Yes, for services.
yeah, it does. It does perhaps. So certainly the unique value proposition, it does. Because you want to know, if it is a service of any kind, right? It could be consulting service, it could be, managed services. What is the customer demand? And you will want to know, what is it that you want to solve for, and also what is important for them, and what exists already out there, what kind of services exist out there that are already trying to address their issue, and why are they falling short if they are? What are the key purchasing criteria of a customer when it comes to picking one service provider over another service provider? Right? Is it price? Is it expert insights? Is it perhaps having some AI capabilities and a technology that can be combined with expert services to deliver a better value proposition, right? Who is in charge of making those choices? And so all of these things you find out through building your unique value proposition. And so, yes, it is absolutely important. When it comes to prototyping, perhaps some of this is less important, although, for example, building your story, maybe it's not necessarily a press release, but it might be, right? If you launch a new consulting company, for example, or a new, service-based offering, then what would you tell people and get these, would it get them excited? Would they get them to, want to go on your website and learn more and interact, maybe click on ask for, a quote or get in touch for more information? All of these things are actually quite helpful. The other thing that I would say is sometimes services are a great way to de-risk the actual product development. So sometimes there's a virtuous cycle between starting to sell your solution, through a project where you build something that is customized, but you do that really with, people, expertise involved. And then you see whether that works or doesn't work, whether the customer likes it or not. And they're essentially what you end up doing is the customer is funding the actual product development. Because then what you've learned, the outputs, maybe some of the tools that you've delivered, the outputs, the deliverables, you can then productize them and actually have them part of a platform, even a subscription-based platform. And it's bingo, because at that point, you are already making money, you are working with the customers, you're definitely going to get feedback, and you're de-risking your product development.
Great. Talking about feedback, we have, I think, a question also is related a little bit about feedback. And this is from Samuel, and he's asking, at what point should we decide that we stop working with this prototype or with this MVP?
It's when the feedback starts to become really positive, both in terms of the user satisfaction and the fact that the product is working and the pain point is clearly being proved is there. That's when, and as you move towards the higher fidelity kind of prototypes, you start, you keep getting good feedback. And it's also scaled. So it's not your initial 10, 15 people that you interviewed, it's 100, maybe 200 people, So there's also an element of, getting enough, essentially a representative sample of customers that build some kind of consensus that what you're delivering is helpful. And some of the metrics also, for example, if this usage metric or some of those helpful measures of success, if they're pointing in the right direction, then it's about time to move into your minimum viable product. And then the minimum viable product is the same story. When I think I mentioned you start launching, oftentimes you start with the pilots. You have a select number of customers, perhaps those that were part of your customer advisory group, plus others where you think the appeal is higher. So you start there. It's always helpful to start focused and then expand. Then you start to see how your sales are going, but then again, some of the other leading metrics. And usually you need to have your first $1 million in the bank before you go for more recurring revenue, if you see what I mean, before you start really launch more broadly and start maybe to think about a fractional VP of sales. I think it's also important early on to have a customer representative, right? Someone that really is there to make the experience of the customers good, so that you get that spot on before you scale more broadly. It's not just about the product, it's also about the business, right? You got to be able to be a functioning business. If you got a great product that the customer support, for example, is clunky, then it's going to be more difficult to scale. And sometimes it's better to get it right before you go more broadly. Bear in mind, the early adopters sometimes are more excited and they're easier to win over. As you try to scale, then sometimes a bit of a different game. So you got to make sure you got your foundations spot on.
Okay, I think we have this is something I can't really understand it, but I'm going to say to you that the question anyway. It's from someone anonymous. So he say, how do you line your story, UVP, especially when block producing? I don't really get it.
Can you just read it again? Because the voice is
He
breaking
say,
up.
how do you line your story, UVP, especially when block producing? I think he should reshape the question.
Yeah, I also not sure.
Bulk producing.
But
Bulk.
Bulk producing, okay.
Bulk producing. So then if I understand well, the question is about crafting a story that is impactful when it comes to bulk producing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay.
This might be something that, by the way, if there's specific questions about specific, market segments, I'd be happy to have offline conversations. I don't know if I'm an expert about.
So also there is a Peterson. I think he would like to understand something between launching and scaling of the product.
Yeah. So launching and scaling a product. Yeah. So as I said, sometimes what it takes to launch successfully is not what it takes to then scale successfully. And the reason being the early adopters, they tend to love a product. For example, we spoke about Tesla just earlier, and Tesla is, started off with a very environmentally conscious customers that wouldn't really mind if there was even the grid to charge the cars. They'd be happy to bear the pain of, having to drive a few miles extra to go and get, their, to their recharging station. So, but then as you scale and you want to go after the masses, quote unquote, you got to be able to have a value proposition that stands the test of them, right? So it's important that you go back and actually, as we said, this is an iterative process. You got to go back and revisit again, what are the pain points? What do they value? What are the key purchasing criteria of, perhaps a broader, customer segment? It may also be that you consciously decided to go after one niche segment and you validate it and you're getting good traction, and then you decide to go after another niche segment. And so that has slightly different needs and behaviors and pain points. And so you will need to potentially adapt slightly your offering or your messaging so that you are relevant for, for them as well. The other thing that I would say is, sometimes it's about also talking to the right people. So a good way to scale is also to be able to position your solution at a more senior level, at a board level, for example. So if you can do that, great. Of course, it'll depend on very much on your solution. But if you can position your solution in a way that resonates with the CEO or the CFO, great. For example, if you're talking about services, right? If you're selling learning and development services, and your core target persona is your HR director, you'll have your product messaging targeted to the HR function. But perhaps, there's a way to get also the CFO excited about it by showing how improving the expertise and the training of your workforce, then you're gonna improve your productivity and actually add to your bottom line. So there's ways to also scale within your current customers by just making it a bigger conversational landing enterprise deals, which sometimes require more of a board approval or a C-level approval. So both in terms of scaling to new customers or to new segments or going up the value chain, the decision-making value chain, there's ways that you need, there's probably a requirement to either change your messaging or at times go back and tweak your offering so that it's relevant for a more, a broader audience.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Francesco. I think we come to an end for our session. Just there are some questions for some of our participant requests for the video. As you can see, we have shared with you like links for the previous. Most of the people, they are asking about the previous session, Francesco, about the previous webinar that we have done it. So we have already shared with you links. You can see it, and even this session is recorded, and we are going to share it via our links. Also, I really recommend for you to go through our website. Then you can learn more about the MBA program and how you can grow up your business with us. As we can say, we don't teach entrepreneurship. We train impact entrepreneurship. Thank you, Francesco, for this lovely session. Thank you all, and wish you a lovely night.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.